Let's roll. This is Countercharge, your podcast for ranks, flanks, and kings of war. Join your hosts as they delve into the world of Panithor and bring you worldwide coverage of all things Kings of War.
Welcome to Countercharge. I'm Rob Enough.
And I'm Matt Croger. Welcome to our May monthly fireside. Missing our own little Buddha, Jeremy, today. He's traveling, but, we're committed to bringing you your monthly fireside on time. So, Rob and I will forge ahead in his absence. So we might jump straight into it because, boy, do we have a long list for our main topic today. Topic got you engaged.
Great contribution from everybody. It was really cool to see that many comments. 275 comments or something like that. It's crazy. Most ever.
100%. So we might roll straight into our traditional community update. So for myself, locally, we've got another ambush tournament from Jats coming up in a couple of weeks. He's doing some locally themed tokens and things like that to go with it. They're coming along really nicely and they're so cool. So we had this famous local hot air balloon because there's a balloon festival every year and it was called the Sky Whale. For any of you that have never seen it, have a look because it was a very interesting design and it used to grace the skies of Canberra. So Jats has had that 3D printed and is putting it on every table to go with various scenarios. So that's going to be cool. There's, I think, the Direct Misfire Guys tournament's coming up. Oh, it's today, the day we're recording, 24th of May. And then the bigger tournaments around the country are about to start rolling in. So for those of you that are in Australia, have a look at the Kings of War Australia Facebook page and you can see what's coming up, and including a tournament across the ditch in New Zealand on the 13th and 14th of September. So that's it for me. What about for you, Robert?
Man, I have been so busy lately. Lots and lots of Champions games. People have bought their companies and they've been assembling them. I don't know about you, Matt. I've really enjoyed Champions. It's been a lot of fun. Locally, we've started a Halo League. Got my first league game in last night. It's pretty awesome. I had up to this point only played like demo games, and so we finally got into it and played some real games with some real scenarios. We're getting ready to start our Champions event. We're going to run like a 6-week build your company, learn to play the game, and play some games competitively. We're getting ready to kick back off on some Armada. We're going to play once a month, so that's a lot of fun. Just locally, man, it's going like gangbusters. And to that end, tomorrow I'm running the Bard Room Brawl. But yeah, so we're going to do a one day. We're going to kick tires on the scenarios from Kings of Memphis and get a chance, give folks a chance to play with the Bard characters. And that reminds me, Kings of Memphis number 5 is coming up on June 21st and 22nd. We have 26 players, Matt. 18 are from Tennessee this year, so a lot more people from Tennessee in terms of our percentage. We've got 2 from Arkansas, 2 from Ohio, 1 from Wisconsin, 1 from Florida, 1 from Mississippi, and we have George. But I think George lives in an RV down by the river. I'm not sure. So I'm not exactly sure where George lives. So let's jump into hobby updates. I'll kick us off, man. I don't know if you guys have been watching my posts, but I'm going crazy, man. I have been painting and hobbying and modeling like an insane person. And I'm looking forward to this weekend because here in the United States it's Memorial Day weekend, so I get an extra day off. Last weekend, I had 3 tables that I was going to paint for the shop. So we would have Kings of War terrain there. Mike printed all the terrain, so everything was 3D printed. And I gave myself a goal. I said, I got Saturday and I got Sunday. That's it. That's all I did, Saturday and Sunday, painted some terrain. And by the way, I posted pictures, and some of y'all got some dirty minds. That's all I'm going to say about that. Finished the champion terrain. I posted that. In terms of champions, I'm playing the Basilean Company, and I finished the Spearman and the Crossbowman, and I've got the Knights about halfway done, and I'm saving the character for last, like little, it's like dessert. Like, oh, that's my reward for finishing the company. More terrain. I finished a graveyard table that we're going to use at Kings of Memphis. I really went out of my comfort zone and grabbed colors from the mat, which is called Burial Ground from Deep Cut Studios. I'm almost done with the table for Chase that we started like 2 years ago. So we will have a final episode kind of laying everything out after, and we'll have Chase on it after he's seen the table in person. But honestly, I'm a little bit like, it's a little bittersweet because I don't want to give it to him. It came out pretty sweet. Like some of his ideas are so wackadoo that I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like for the forests, we have like these poisonous clouds that are like venting out of the ground, and they're like green and black, and they came out so good, dude. And it's just like, oh, so I will say though, I've been killing myself on the hobby front lately because I know that I have about 4 weeks until the next event, Kings of Memphis 5. And I know between now and then I'm going to be busy just getting out all the terrain and touching it up and getting things ready. And running an event is always a stressful activity. And I like to go into the event as prepared as I possibly can be. So, Matt, how about you on the hobby front?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of hobby, which is nice. Like I've just been, I think I said it last time, so busy with work. I mean, busy enough that I even said to you guys, you never know, I might have to throw in the towel on the cast, but hopefully not. Hopefully I'll bring it under control. But I have been managing to get some hobby in. So I've finished they're finished now, 2 hordes of abyssals, lower abyssals, so they're done. And as we work our way through this cast, I should have the last of the assembly of 2 regiments and a horde of berserkers and a regiment of Nagari all put together, ready to be sprayed and then start painting. So that's going to break the back of a fair bit of the army, which is good. And then I backed a while ago I think it's called the Omni 5 case, paint case, or storage case or hobby station from a company, and I've been putting that together, which was way more detailed and involved than what I thought. Oh man, I've had to print so many. I've gone through reams of filament trying to do it, and then even then you still need to. I think what they're not super clear about is how many screws and that you still need to put it all together. So that's been taking a fair bit of time, but that's all good, and I'm enjoying these abyssals. I'm enjoying kind of the theme I've gone for, and the putting them together is relatively easy. I mean, I hate assembling, but
they're older models, and they do go together pretty easily.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you got a body and you got a couple arms.
The thing I'd say about the lower abyssals, and I was talking to John Paul, and he said it's similar with the succubi, is just like some of the positioning, a bit of the things are a bit off. Like the lower abyssals, there's not many of the models where both feet touch the ground. Like they're in this dynamic pose.
Preach, brother, preach.
Yeah. So like then putting them on the base is a bit of a pain in the bum, but it's happened and it's worked, I think. So I should take some photos of that at some point. Yeah, and then that's probably a good time to check in with our hobby commitment.
You're going to make me talk about this. Honestly, like I've made no progress on the hobby commitments. All the stuff I've worked on, and I worked on a lot. I mean, a lot, guys, but it's all been not a commitment. So a couple things that I didn't mention is I also built an elf fleet for Armada. I've just built every ship they make. Basically the starter box, the booster box, and the extra large, and the flyers. And so I'm in the process of I'm going to paint those up for our little event, or our little once a month Armada activity. There's no progress there. Matt, I'm sure you're killing it. So tell us.
I thought you were a manager, mate. I thought you'd be good with a plan, project timeline.
My problem is a scope creep, man. I have a plan, but then I'm like, I want to build. I mean, literally in the last month, I made 3 tables, right, of terrain.
Someone needs to get you on a Canva board or something like that, getting you all
Kanban board. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Little lean manufacturing. Yeah, you're speaking my language.
But no, well, with the abyssals, with the amount that I've got 4. I mean, as per previously, the halflings were done. So now 400-ish points of the abyss is painted out of the 2,300. So once I've done the 2,300 of abyss, I'll just have the 1,000 of another army to go. But, I don't know about our boy Jeremy. I haven't seen any painting updates recently.
But here's what I'll say. For my stuff, I am going to get everything done on my list this year, and I'm going to double it. I'm just going to embarrass you guys at the end. I'm going to be like, oh, by the way, I had to paint 250 points of Armada. I already did that with the Abyssal Dwarves. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
This is the year I'm just trying to get stuff done, man. And it doesn't have to be done perfect. It just needs to get done.
Yeah, it's kind of this weird trap at the moment, isn't it? Where we know kind of fourth is coming. So, like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh, how much of this will change? I'm hoping it's primarily going to be characters that change. So then it's just a matter of making another base.
My buddy Brian Trahan locally was like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to make a new army. I'm like, dude, just paint your core stuff. If you're going to do ogres, warriors are going to still be in the list and they're not going to suck, right? Paint the stuff is going to be there, right? And, hopefully, maybe in a few more months, we'll get some hints on what's coming.
Well, and to be honest, if Mantic make models for it, it's not going anywhere. Even if you're doing something that's non-Mantic, if Mantic have an equivalent, it's not going anywhere.
If you want to paint some other people's ogres, the ogre army is going to be here.
I think after this, I've had files for a long, long time for like an Empire of Dust army from Lost Kingdom. And I think I'm just going to paint them as quickly as I can.
The Lizardmen, or is it the Bretonian stuff, or what is it?
No. So they've got I think they call it Undying Dynasties or something.
So like an Empire of Dust type of thing?
Yeah. So, I think I might do that. And yeah, you'll do the stuff that they have,
Lost Kingdom stuff is amazing. They were a sponsor of like the very first Blue Sea Brawl, like a million years ago. And back then they weren't doing STLs. They gave us a bunch of resin to give away. Their stuff is really good.
Really good.
The sculpts are really good.
Yeah, really good. All right. Well, with that, why don't we take a quick commercial break, Rob, and then we'll be back with some feedback and engagement, a few stats for you guys on, what goes on with the show. Well, then we'll move into our main topic.
I'm Mark Barber. I sound like a villain from the original Star Wars trilogy, and you're listening to Countercharge.
Welcome back to Countercharge, and as Matt alluded to before the break, we're going to get into feedback and engagement. We kind of want to do something a little bit different. We get questions occasionally, like how many folks listen to Countercharge? And the short answer is we really don't actually know. Most folks are getting the show through RSS feed, and the stats that we get from various podcast aggregators like Spotify or Apple, it's inconsistent, right? You don't really know. And on top of that, even if someone's downloading an episode, I don't actually know if they've actually listened to the episode, right? So for those that are interested, we got about 5,000 to 6,000 active listeners. And I think that makes sense, Matt, because if you look at the growth on our Facebook page, we're at about 1,600 people. I'm sure a bunch of those listeners don't actually use Facebook. So
no, and important to note, that's 5,000 to 6,000 regular. We probably have a hell of a lot more that might access a show or two.
The way we structure our show is most of our episodes are specific topics. And so people can pick and choose a la carte what topics they're interested in.
Yeah, so the 5,000 to 6,000 is basically people that are doing it pretty much every month.
It's a big thanks to the community that we are where we are because, people are listening, they're giving reviews, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and they're spreading the gospel of Countercharge. In terms of demographics, we did take a look at where people are listening from. And unsurprisingly, about 50% are from the US. And then from there, it goes UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Me, I like statistics. So we figured, hey, let's take a look at reviews from those demographics. And maybe we can give some shout outs, right? So as Matt likes to say, Australia is punching above its weight.
Per capita.
Another thing I should mention, I would love a better way to aggregate some of this information because to get this stuff out of Apple Podcasts, you have to manually go in and ask for Great Britain or Canada. It would be so cool if somebody made an app that did all that. But we went in and took a look at the US, and we've got 79 reviews with an average score of 5.0. Our last review is in 2024 at the end of the year. So if you're a US listener and you haven't given us a review, we'd love to have it. Next up, we've got the UK. We've only got 18 reviews in the UK, right? And our last review is 5 years ago. Can you believe that, Matt?
That's
5 years ago. Crazy. And then we've got, Matt's favorite. We got 13 reviews from Australia with a 5.0 average score. And our last review was in 2024. Now, here's the one that caught me off a little bit. Again, fourth on the list in terms of where people are listening from is New Zealand.
If we're talking about per capita, New Zealand is really punching. There's not many people there, and there's more possums in New Zealand than people.
I thought it was sheep.
Both, probably, to be honest. We've got a great amount of listeners, and but no reviews.
I would love to have a Kiwi review at some point. And then to round us out, we've got 9 reviews from Canada. But I thought Canadians were supposed to be like more gregarious and more outgoing. We haven't had a review in 6 years from Canada.
They're frozen.
Yeah, they're frozen.
That explains Mr. Koosa's speech, doesn't it? It was
100%.
slowing down. If we talk to him now, he wouldn't actually make it to the next word.
For those that gave us a review, huge thank you. And if you haven't yet and you want to help the show grow, we'd love to have you tell us what you think. So this is the spot in the Fireside Chat where we usually talk Mantic news, Mantic Vault. But Matt, we got like 200 plus comments to get through for the topic of the month. So for this month, we're going to skip it. So hopefully you're not too heartbroken. But I will say, if you are using the Vault and you're not part of the Facebook group, please do it. It is criminal how under-engaged that Facebook group is. I mean, Clive is out there sharing previews and stuff, and we would love to have more people, tell them what you think. So,
all right, well, let's take another quick commercial break, and we'll be back with the topic of the month.
I'm Just Fletcher, the reigning Masters champion, and you're listening to Countercharge.
And welcome back. And so the topic of this month was, what are your hopes and dreams, deepest dark desires, wishes for 4th edition, which, we still don't have a firm timeline on. I mean, certainly my expectation is that we won't have a clash, which doesn't necessarily mean that it will be out this year, but it means that all eyes are on 4th. So, we expect it to be coming. It's just a matter of when. And like we've mentioned a couple of times already, you guys got on board with telling us what you want to see in the future of the game. So I might roll straight into it, Rob, and we'll start discussing these things. So first up, we had General Gaddafi with cleaning up, withdrawing, and disengaged, which, absolutely needs to be done, doesn't it? Because it's one of the most things I still, even experienced players, I still hear them using the terms interchangeably. I'm like, they're not the same thing.
I wonder how much they're going to take from champions. I really do, because they've reinstituted the bounce back mechanic, basically. And so you don't stay engaged after combat. If you don't kill the unit bounces back. If they can't bounce back the full 2 inches, then they take damage and then you bounce back. And so I'm expecting to see some of that in 4th edition. How about you, Matt?
I agree. And that effectively exists in Firefight as well. So if we look at what they're doing across games, which I think can be a reasonable hint sometimes. And I guess the argument would be, champions and Firefight, you've got a lot smaller bases. Is it different to do? But the fact is that people adapt. It's kind of with like the, don't take away, withdraw kind of thing. People would adapt to the game. So, and even with playtesting, you can't say, I think, in the early stages, when this changed, it meant all games became a grind or anything, because you don't actually get I've played this for a couple of months now and I've worked out how to make this work or not work for me. I expect we'll see something more like that. And I mean, I think the biggest problem people had with bouncing back previously was the what if you couldn't wasn't very refined. So if they tidy that up, I think it'll be fine.
I mean, in Champions, you have that sort of the same thing, but now you bounce back. And what's pretty interesting is you could go into combat in Champions knowing you're not going to beat them, just to bounce them back 2 inches, maybe to put them in difficult terrain, maybe to take them off a token. And I think it's pretty cool how you can do that. So next up, we got Matthew Temple. He says a total revamp of unit cost across the board, as well as a new unlocking system. The new unlocking system is 100%. You got to do that. In terms of unit cost, I'm wondering if he's thinking like he has some specific units he feels are undercosted or overcosted, and maybe that needs to be adjusted. And maybe what he's asking for is the whole formula needs to be redone.
I mean, if the rules are different, there will be some rebalancing, right? So, I think that's going to happen one way or another. Next up is Randy Davis. Let the free dwarfs keep Brock Rider cav and give Imperial dwarves heavy cav with some armored bear riders.
This is the guy that has a bunch of bear stuff in his army, right?
Yeah, no bias there. You never know. That's if both dwarf factions continue to exist.
Yeah, maybe they get consolidated into one list. Even though I'm pretty sure Ronnie said when we talked to him at Adepticon that they wouldn't be consolidated. Don't quote me on that. So next up, we got Chet Dudek. His first point is switch to a D8 or D10 system for more variety amongst the units. This allows games to revisit all of its units without losing flavor. There's some argument to moving to D8 because most of the other games use the D8. The D10 is the exception would be Armada, but that's not because they like D10s. It's because what Black Seas uses.
Yeah.
Right. And his second point is make armies more flavorful in the way that Trident Realms, Halflings, and Northern Alliance. Agreed. Like just make them more synergistic, right, Matt?
100%.
And then I wouldn't mind combining certain armies as his third point. I think there's going to be some opportunity for some consolidation where you've got armies that are so similar that there's no point for them to be separate. I keep going back to Kingdoms of Men and League of Roria. Number 4, so remove command dice from the game in their current mode. Yeah, maybe just get rid of the dice like the actual randomness, and maybe they just have commands. You don't have to pay for them. They're just part of a unit or a leader. Number 5, rebalance certain scenarios so they don't overly reward going first or second. We just had a list builder studio that just went up with Richard Comstock, and he pointed out with a ZOD scouting list, he's pretty good at stockpile. He's pretty good at stockpile. So yeah, there's probably some benefits to go there. Number 6, add some lore back into the rulebook, even if it's just a paragraph describing each unit. It's so funny that's where we were like many, many years ago. They've added so many armies and so much more stuff. Like the book got massive. And so they made the decision to pull the fluff out. Because if you remember, they used to have unit entries. For each unit would have like a little like paragraph about the unit. I mean, I guess if we're going to companion, there's probably a way to do that, like digitally stitch it together. Then he says, remove optional rules. 100% agree. I hate optional rules. I hate them. Tell me what the rules are so that there's no disagreement. Like when we show up to the table, we're using or we're not using withdraw. I'll jump into the next one. Jesse Garrett, he says, I hope all factions have interesting designs like Northern Alliance and Halflings. I totally agree with that one.
Next up, we've got Nick Brooks for alternating actions for the movement phase. I don't mind the I go, you go, but I wouldn't mind going into a more engaging style of play. Yeah, it's interesting. I think one problem with that is it does start to drag the time frame of the game out, right? I mean, I know there's clocks, but it still makes it a more challenging thing. You would have to increase the time of games with something like that, which I wouldn't be pro, to be honest.
It's very difficult for a you go, I go to have alternating activations, right? Because that's the whole point of a you go, I go. I go my army, you go your army. We're back and forth. My concern would be overcomplicating, but like there are other games that are I go, you go, but then have like the ability to interrupt the other player's turn, like with an Overwatch or something. I'm not sure how well that would work in Kings of War, but interesting. Jason Murray says cleaning up, withdraw, and disengage. That might be my number one thing that needs to be fixed. That and the unlocking system. And then he says, and if command orders are introduced, make them much more balanced between factions. If I have a critique on command orders, like there's some armies that have great faction orders and some that don't. And that's probably just comes down to they didn't have time to really spend the time to get them, to give everybody something good. I don't know. What are your thoughts on command orders?
I'm not sure. I like the idea because I think it makes the individuals more flavoursome in the game if they're tied to the individuals. I'm not against there being some sort of resource mechanic, to be honest, because I think that just influences list building that little bit more. And one of the constant knocks on Kings over the years has been how granular is the building system, and people don't get as much depth as some other games, and I think that adds a little bit of depth. So I don't mind the resource thing too much, but as long as Jason said, they're balanced across the factions. So if they're baked in, I don't think there's a bigger problem with resource generation. Next up, we've got Daniel Bryan. In terms of disengaging, I'd enjoy seeing an order option that would allow units to perform some sort of tactical retreat, something that allow cavalry to spend a turn running and reforming so they can charge again rather than bogging down. Yeah, that's not a bad thing. It might also allow units that survive a multi-charge the chance to yield ground to try providing a frontal facing towards their attackers. And I think if it's tied to some sort of order or specific rule, I think that's not too complicated. I don't mind that. Who would have predicted this from Keith Conroy for Herd to still exist? He beats that drum, doesn't he, Keithy boy?
That would not be a bet I would make. And this next comment from Foreign is interesting. He says, get rid of the charge rules. If you make contact with your normal move, then you are in melee. So right now, if you have to double them, you don't get a pivot, and charge you do.
What do you think she's talking about there? Essentially removing the extra pivot.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a few special rules that give you a bonus on a charge. If you don't have a charge rule, you don't have those special rules, right? And you lose some flavor of charging, of the benefit of a charge.
The only time you can get within an inch of an enemy unit is if you charge. If there's no charge rule, then I guess you could just say you can always go within an inch of an enemy model. I'm not sure. One of the interesting things here that this brings up is I wonder, again, how things will be pulled from champions, right? So in champions, you have to have at least 1 inch of frontage to have a legal charge, right? You can only charge 1 unit per facing in champions. So it'll be interesting to see if they pull some of those things.
Yeah, the 1 inch thing and have to contact by an inch, to me, doesn't make a whole heap of sense. Like I know there's some things over corner to corner, but for me, about 1 inch. So, like, you've just gone from we have an argument over 1 millimeter versus we have an argument over 24 or 26 millimeters. Do you know what I mean? Like, a millimeter still matters either way. Like, it just doesn't seem to change anything for me, except some maybe it feels a little bit better, but I think you're still going to end up with similar arguments.
Would it be easier, though, to prevent surge? Like, so if you know you're only exposing like a half an inch.
Is it that hard to prevent surge, though? Like,
well, I'm just asking. I don't know. Well, what I'm saying is they can surge into you, but under champions rules, doesn't matter that they can make contact with the front. If they're not contacting an inch, then, I mean, I guess the argument's the same now,
Yes, it would
right?
make it easier. Yeah.
It would make it easier to stop it. It'll be interesting. I think we will see disengaging, withdrawal, charging. I think there'll be some refinement there. So
yeah, big changes.
Paul Collins says, I'm looking forward to some more dwarf buffs. He knows Ronnie well. I mean, there's more dwarf buffs coming.
I feel like there's just a hint of sarcasm in there, Paul. And then we've got Dave Fanning. Heaps of change, but also no change.
Classic.
Yeah. Advance the law and release a Green Lady army as a key faction in version 4. Yeah, that's interesting.
Next up, we have Dan. He says faction consolidation with leaders that unlock specific units, i.e. roll Sylvankin into elves. Must have Wanderer or Master Hunter to unlock Sylvankin units. I like that concept for unlocking, where you have to take certain key heroes that will then inform the type of army you're making and the type of regiments and hordes and stuff that you get access to. He also mentions modify withdraw. So units with lower unit strength can't withdraw from units with higher unit strength. I like that one a lot. That's really interesting because it sort of means that if you are going to go into that big horde with unit strength 4, you better go in heavy, right? Because you're stuck there.
Well, and I think it's a subtle way to nudge away from multiple smaller units to bigger units, you know? It's a subtle way to affect list building. Jonathan Watch, official narrative campaign rules, would love an option for a map.
Did you ever use that back in the day for Warhammer? General's Compendium, and it was like a set of campaign rules for Warhammer, and it was awesome. It had siege, it had like how you integrate like maybe naval, some other things, you know, and just so cool. So next up we got Rick Hoy. I would like to see greater usage of keywords. Not all armies benefit from them equally, even if it's just the Living Legends restricted character units that create bonuses for the keywords. Or perhaps you could purchase some specific keywords, but not all. I mean, that would make sense. Like in a halfling list, I'm going to buy this guy the Tinkerer rule. That makes sense. I would also like some revamping of the scenarios. I like the bluff token scenarios, but I know not everyone does. Would like to see more of them, or at least make them more appealing. Loot tokens, picking up and scoring, may need some tweaks for balance too. I would like to see all war machines with the reload rule get secured position. This is a good comment because like it's all over the map. Like, why did Abyssal Dwarves need unit strength on their stuff?
Or dwarves.
Or dwarves.
Normal dwarves.
But then like other armies
crazy.
like the Siege Artillery and Kingdoms of Men didn't.
It was bizarre. That was one of the most bizarre changes to me.
As of now, it's usually an all or nothing choice. Invest heavily or not at all. I totally agree with Rick there. He says for army specific, give the Goblin Fleabag Cavalry Explodematics upgrade TC2 back. Just the TC1 now makes it a useless upgrade that wounds you as much as the enemy. Makes it a little more punchy, that's for sure. And Ensnare and Phalanx -1 to hit should not stack, just like Brutal and Dread. I don't know. Kingdoms of Men might disagree.
Not sure about the Explodematics. I still see him in plenty of lists.
I know they have some models. They're not good. They're the PVC ones that I have in my Ogre list I use for scouts. Listen, Mantic, Papa Rob here. All you got to do is take the hack paws that you already made in resin for the Ratkin army and just give me some STL goblins to ride them. In fact, even if you just took the bottom half of the Ratkin Hawkpaw himself, the rider, and just changed the head and the arms, or maybe even the feet, that'd be fine too. Can you please? That's on my wish list for 4th. I have a cool goblin army, but I'm like, there's certain things I want to play with that I can't play with them because I want cool models. So
then we have a few comments from Squirm and Vermin. The cover concealment rules are way too complicated. Those need to be fixed. Yeah, that was an example of one of the biggest poops of the bed.
Do you remember when I was like, oh, it just makes total sense? And
now I remember very well.
And I completely have turned around because when I was there, I was like, oh, it differentiates different kinds of units, like lobbers versus direct shooters. You know, at the end of the day, it's like pulling off casualties from a unit. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No, I never forget a scenario where I get to say I was right.
Well, I'm sure with your wife, it never happens, right?
Well, exactly. If it happens with a client, it's so frequent for me to actually go, if they say, oh, yeah, you were right, I go, hang on, what now? And they go, what do you mean? I said, oh, can you just repeat what you said? I need you to repeat it here because I don't hear it at home.
That's all.
And then so Squirman also said a new unlock force building system. So we're hearing that a lot. I mean, I think that's a pretty sure thing, to be honest. And then his last comment is there's a typo in the rule book that says Ratkin are evil. Please fix this.
Next up, we've got Erasmus. He says, just general cleanup, to be honest. There are a few loose ends that were experiments that didn't quite go the distance, like army upgrades and command dice. Again, I think they'll revisit all those things where they've gotten mixed feedback on. There are also mechanics that could be rethought, like the unlock system. Agreed, he had a good idea that we talked about a few months ago or whatever, where you have like this unit unlocks X amount of unit strength. But perhaps a look at everything in the game is really necessary, like withdraw in an arcane library. Yeah, I mean, every so often it's less evolution and it's more revolution, right? And it's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes you really got to take a look. And I think with Alessio Cavitor coming back into the fold, Papa Alessio is going to come back and take a look at the rules, give it a good scrutiny, which it needs. Occasionally you need to do that.
Absolutely. Then we've got Scott Sallee with a narrative campaign mechanism, a large map of Panathor, the ability for Armada, Ambush, and Champions to integrate into a narrative campaign, ability for halflings to heal, an aeronaut hero for the halflings, no more optional rules. So most of these not most of these, but some of these we've heard. Allies are not used currently, so does there need to be the good, evil, neutral alignments, standard size of terrain, and most importantly, for it to still be fun, welcoming, and tournaments to still be filled with laughs and friendship. He wants a printable map of Panathor, and he says gamers hate two things: when things change and when things stay the same.
That's funny. He's got a lot to unpack there. The standard size of terrain, that was my mission to do that. And it didn't get anywhere because I think most people around the world that are playing Kings of War, they're not making new terrain. So their terrain is whatever their terrain is. But it would be nice to have some guidance on, roughly the size, right? So if you're interested in that, you can go take a look at what I think the pieces of terrain should be. We've got some files on the website in the download section that give you things that you can laser cut out like a piece of MDF.
I do also wonder with that too, whether there's a lot of people haven't. One, I think that's a very good point that they don't want to build more, but also because so many places use maps where then if you also standardize the terrain size, does it become even more samey? That you're not getting that variation. So, I don't think it's a bad idea by any stretch, but I wonder if that plays into why people might not do it as well.
Another thing that he brings up, the thing about an aeronaut hero for halflings, that's got me thinking. I've been playing Champions. We need a single Nagari for the Forces of the Abyss and Kings of War. I think that would be super cool. Paul Forbes is up next. He says, honestly, tidying up a handful of rules, extra terrain types. This guy, he knows me so well. We've used mixed terrain before where you put an obstacle on a hill or something like that, but he's got some other examples. A forested hill. So a hill that you could stand on and get cover. The
simplest change in there would be differentiate between your flatter terrains. Have some rules for fields versus ponds, because the other thing is how do you provide that variation without making it too complicated, without getting away from the ethos of Kings of that basically you can pick it up and learn it.
I mean, a good example there is forests, right? They are just difficult terrain, but they have some additional rules.
So Max K, differentiating between factions more to make them feel more unique. For example, take the regular Elven units out of the Sylvankin list and take the Verdant units out of the Elf list. Absolutely.
Next up, we have Alistair. First and foremost, the majority of rules are fine and don't need to be written for the sake of a new edition. A big shakeup in the army list and units. This is where the freshness of a new edition should come from. Reinvigorate the game with the units, the rules, and abilities. Keep stupid gimmicks like command dice and out of it. Never again give me optional rules. Either play test it thoroughly or commit to a change or don't bother. He brings up a good point about optional rules, but here's the situation. You've got half your player base wants a rule and half don't. Difficult thing because sometimes you'll disenfranchise half the people. Tidy your terrain rules. tidy your terrain rules. That's speaking to you, Matt. Get rid of obscuring and concealed, right? Just combine them back together. Streamline without oversimplification and dumbing down the game. Don't F it up. There's a lot of competition out there at the moment, and it would be very easy for needless change or bad rules to push players away. Most of the time, it's new edition that kills games, and I feel like 4th edition is a big gamble. The rules writing coming from Mantic recently has me concerned for new edition.
Kings of War, from an external point of view, it does not seem to be growing rapidly. So I don't think they need to cater to people who say, don't change my game. I think they need to change the game enough in a way that they think will draw new clientele. And this kind of also speaks to his last point about invalidating people's armies.
If it's not growing, they got to change something. They're going to cater for the people that aren't already here to see if they can get some more people in, And the trick is, anytime a business makes a change, they're making a change to get more customers.
And I think that's possible. I think with the streamlining of the rules, right, and making it as simple as you can with Alessio and with hopefully not losing flavour for it, that bit will work for existing players. But if they somehow manage to keep flavour, good unlocking system and things with producing good models, that might bring more people. Yeah, so next up we've got Jats Turk. Not wholesale changes to the game I enjoy. Commands, auras and spells combined into one phase. So that's an interesting point about bringing it into a phase.
I don't want redundancy. We don't need 3 ways to get Pathfinder. He's sort of saying the same thing. But
yeah. Consolidate lists, which we've heard. Consolidate scenarios back to 12. I'm kind of the opposite there. I don't mind having a butt ton of scenarios at the moment, but it's more likely, I guess, that it probably would come back to 12. Fill in units that exist that are not in production. Oh, brother.
Give me my Commodons, man. I've been asking for that for a million years.
I know the lowest hanging fruit for the Vault has been do what you've already got, but man, there should have been some opportunity in the last. We're at 24 months now to fill in more of the ranges.
You know what's funny, though? I think that Vampire Count Dragon has sort of showed they're at least thinking about it.
100%.
Next up, we've got Gord. He says, I would like to see some way of limiting spam. Maybe the unit costs more after the first 2. I want all armies and units to remain usable. Use the 1-inch rule in Champions. You can move within a 1 inch, but you have to end 1 inch away. That's a good point. And that might go back to the comment about charging and stuff, right? Because in Champions, you can just move within an inch of an enemy, but you got to end an inch away. Then we got Brian Luttrell, make infantry viable again. Well, Brian, you got to play an army that has good infantry.
And so next up, we've got our boy, Matt Selleck. And, I think he's doing long comments on here because, I don't know, do they put out episodes anymore over there at Direct Misfire?
I wish they would.
Where's those dulcet Benson tones, to soothe me?
How good is Andrew on that show?
Matt says, hero to get inspiring or a name. Yep, couldn't agree more there. Clean up of factions, enabling an unlock system to give depth and variation to races. 3 unique items or spells for each faction. Yeah, I think that's a easy enough thing to do, particularly if it was items. More lore, refreshed commands, good idea but needs work. Australian Masters or Clash winners to get invites to Europe Clash. That's not 4th edition, but I'm still putting it in as his 6th point. So
Classic.
That might break the bank at Mantic, I think.
No.
Depends how well Halo keeps going.
Next up, we've got Mark from New Zealand. He says, definitely don't change it too much, I think. Introduce some better standard terrain rules. At a minimum, option like 12 maps, like the Drunken Dwarf map pack, so you could just roll and pick one easily. Would only take a couple pages. Yeah, agreed. I mean, just take something like that where you have terrain layouts and put them in the book. Just keep 12 best scenarios. That's the second time we heard that. That's interesting. E.g., swap out kill for hold the line. The funny part about kill, and I think Dylan Scribner's like the first one that mentioned this, kill is just playing the game. So it's not even really a scenario. So you don't really need to have it as a scenario in the game. That's just if you want to teach somebody how to play the rules in absence of actually playing a scenario. Make more of the bread and butter infantry cavalry a staple rather than just unlocks. Keep siege and maybe legendary rules. They don't take up much space and add a lot of options and characters. I love siege battles, dude. And to be fair, I haven't done one in a while, but agreed. 100%. I like those kind of specialty one-off games, whether it's siege or asymmetric battles or the scenarios that were in Destiny of Kings, where you had like this forces of the Abyss army that just kept coming, kind of like Halo, right? Where you get killed and it respawn. Ditch the space-consuming format of unit profiles, the dumb circles, and go back to a simple, clean stat line, plus a brief unit description like Kings of War 2nd Edition or the Oral World have, or brief descriptions that cover several units on a page but tied more closely to them. Magic, just streamline the options. Don't ditch armies, just reformat so they don't take up as much space, e.g. the dwarf list. List all common dwarf units on profile. Also list abilities, differences, imperial. Okay, so I think like his next few are just talking about like how you can consolidate, and then within the book you can streamline the way it's laid out, so you're not repeating the same thing.
Next up, we have Idiot Proof Dalek. I'd like it to be less punishing to receive a flank attack. This would dilute the power of alpha strikers and make infantry more viable because it sticks around. It would also mean games become less cagey as we both constantly nudging out rectangles to avoid the inevitable multi-charge.
I do get what he's saying.
Once you get a flank right, if it's from a decent unit, you are cooked. But also, maybe it's a 6-turn game. You know, do you really want to end up at the end of these turns because flanks wasn't as punishing with all your units still in the middle of the board?
Well, what I will say is in Champions, it feels more aggressive. There's been several games that ended a lot earlier. Now, that might just be because there's less units on the table, but...
So he also says we need fluff about the heroes we use in our armies. And amid all the cleanup and disengage and change the unlock system, I'd throw in the change the rules entirely if it brings new people into the game, which is basically what we said before.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you're not growing, you're going to shake things up to try to bring some new blood in. Scott says multi-charge must have leadership points on the base if it is charging to be effective charge. That's interesting because it kind of does the same thing that they've been doing with the 1 inch.
Yeah, so if your center can't contact, your center can't contact, basically.
What it will do is it will reduce the amount of units that can charge a facing. And it kind of eliminates the ability to smart charge sometimes. Because you'll have to make decisions. Like, if I smart charge here, that means this unit's leader point wouldn't be able to charge. So, more options for different formation choices in factions to help with theme. There is an option here to build on champions and have the champion list translate to different formations and heroes, give a pathway for champions to build in Kings of War. I mean, certainly, you have a troop of Basilean spearmen, right? And in champions, they have a lot more nerve. Maybe there's a way to translate that. And then optional rules for narrative terrain. Roll a dice or have a card to determine if terrain has different effects. You know, a thorn forest. I mean, great. These are great suggestions. Charging a unit into a thorn forest, treat the unit being charged as having an ensnared special rule, but doesn't stack. So like you're defending like you're in a briar patch, for example, or something, right? And if they charge you, not only is there an obstacle there, you're ensnared. Next up, we have Tom Freeman. He says, streamlining of rules is inevitable, especially with Alicio involved. I hope this doesn't include ditching factions, ambush, or auras. I don't think ambush is going anywhere. Ambush is in the continuation. You've got basically Dungeon Saga Origins, you've got Vanguard, you've got Champions, you've got Ambush, and now you have Kings of War. And then you could even argue you have like Legendary Kings of War. So I think Ambush is here to stay. They have the boxes. I think auras, some will stay, some will go. I think it'll come down to, is it interesting? And is there different ways to get the same effect? Factions, there's going to be consolidation. There's no way around that. I do hope we see some innovation around scenario play, though, for some narrative and flavorful games. I mean, asymmetric, right? At the very least would be interesting. And there is a narrative scenario in the current Clash of Kings. Andrew Goodman says, build use of the Mantic IP dice into the flow and nature of the game, not as a tack on to as command dice seems. Keep it simple, declutter and remove any exceptions to the rules. I mean, that's the $1 million problem, right? Like the edge cases, right? You try to get rid of them, but it's very difficult.
Then we've got Lance Holden. I'd like to see more optional upgrades and keyword interactions. I'd especially like to see leaders have some more control impacts in them, whether recovering wavering troops or their presence boosting related keywords. Instead of faction-specific command points, there could be unit-specific command activations per turn, all allocated at the start of the round, and then just activating extra special rules or unlocks for the turn. Not a lot of complex interaction, just a buff somewhere. Nicholas Lee, nerf infantry. They are too prevalent.
Is he Australian? Is he Australian?
No. Nick's one of our Asian friends, Nicholas Lee, nerf infantry, they're too prevalent and should have lower unit strength with an increase in cost. I I do not recall seeing that frequently. Buff flyers currently, they're not fast enough nor nimble enough. Increased unit strength is ideal. Nerf shooting, range 5 for your standard bowman is overbearing. Bring back pot shot. Include a third form of cover. Obscure and concealed is great, but I think 3 or 4 different forms of cover would provide even more tactical depth. Yep, that's what I think would be great for 4th edition. I'm thinking Nick might be dripping in a bit of sarcasm here.
Maybe he's been hanging out with you Australians too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up, we have Justin Berg. He says the RC has done a good job in the updates over the last couple of years with making Malay infantry have a home in the lists they've updated. I'd love to see that energy spread across all the factions in the new edition. Agreed. You could argue that the ones that got a makeover are more interesting than the ones that haven't. Next up, David Musgrave says sort out command order system, possibly more like champions than random dice. Again, it's the same thing, but it's not random, right? You have 3 commands. You can give each unit one of those commands. He also says streamline army building, theme lists rather than ditching stuff. Get Ophidia rules and an army into the game. Well, I mean, that's part of the problem, right? Like they've got stuff that probably needs to be consolidated to make room for things like Ophidia. Tweak infantry so the middle of the road stuff is usable rather than just the crap stuff or elite stuff is used. That's an interesting point, though, that he's making here, because what you do see is trash, goblins, those kind of units, or the heavy, soul reavers, It would be cool to see stuff that's more mid-grade that find a place. Dan Barr says, I'd like to see a bit of an overhaul on the undead list. If I remember correctly, there's a Temple Brother that's in agreement there. They've had some minor tweaks over the years, but I think it's time that they got new plastics, new units, and some tweaks.
I think it's hard with undead because there's so much other good stuff out there. So I think it's a hard one to redo.
That's the problem with undead, is that their models are still selling pretty well.
Yeah.
They're selling it to RPG players and stuff as well. So it's a tough one.
Here we go. Far out. Let me have some water so I'm fresh. Okay. Bring back allies. I don't care if they're bad or severely restrict what you can take. I just want some slaves. I mean, mercenary allies for my Imperial Dwarves. A range refresh for Dwarves. Further limits on how many irregular units. I'm going to summarize some of these for him because he's been so outrageous. Right. Further limits on how many irregular units you can take. That'll probably come into the unlock system. If allies don't happen, then at least give the Imperial Dwarves a slave. I mean, indentured conscripts. Make individuals great again. Law for Faber Ironheart. Change the alignment system. I've always said the best alignment system I've seen is in Lord of the Rings game, where it's based on law rather than good, evil, neutral. Adrian's suggestion is to make it more law specific with shining, neutral, or wicked. Ratkin slaves need to stay. Blech. Core rules that further differentiate and give reasons to use. Troops, regiments, hordes, and legions. Maybe troops all get ordered march while hordes get fury. I don't mind something like that. I think the problem is that unit sizes transverse unit types. So I think that's tough. But anyway, it's worth looking at. Keep command dice. Believes the concept's great, just the execution poor. Replace naiads and salamanders in forces of nature with the herd units. I want more theme armies, not less. A dwarf hero and at least one other dwarf unit for Northern Alliance. A short paragraph describing each unit in the army lists. 3rd edition was missing this. Better lore for the orcs. Well, it's hard to have lore when they're dead. No wild charge auras. A themed army list made up of steampunk goblins from the City of Glimmer. Get rid of the obscure and concealed nonsense. An Imperial Dwarf heavy cavalry. Just do it. Yeah. You've had your 20 points, Adrian.
So he's got some good points there. I think the one thing that I would point is he says, I want more theme armies, not less. It costs Mantic almost nothing. Well, it costs something to balance and to keep things in the game. So what they could do, Matt, and this is an idea that other companies have done, they say, look, we're going to keep the army, but it's not getting any new updates. Like, it's legacy. And here it is. You can keep playing it, and other armies might eventually surpass its status.
Yeah. I think when people say it costs nothing, they're only thinking about financial cost, which there's still some at particular times at like change of edition, but there's also human cost with things like RC and the amount of time that they have to put into balancing these armies or trying to balance them, but at like Clash of Kings or whatever. So
next up, we have Paul Yates. I love the game where it's at right now. General rules cleanup and consolidation would be nice. Scenarios, special rules, magic, etc. My nitpicky list would be no optional rules. I would not disagree there. Standardized terrain setup and heights, pretty much like what we have now, just make it official. Simplify cover. Well-integrated command order system if they plan on using them. And then he liked the idea that Florence had about, there's no charge movement mechanic. It's just, you just use your regular moves to move in. And then he also wouldn't mind consolidating lists as long as you can still reasonably use all your models. I mean, they always do that, right? Let's just say hypothetically, if they don't have herd as a separate list, those herd models will be available in Forces of Nature in some way, right? So he has a bonus to officially go back to miniature agnostic. I don't think you're ever going to see any company that makes models say that.
It's not the company that makes it so. At the start of second edition, there was this come and use your models to play our game because of the upheaval in the gaming world, right? Since then, it hasn't been their modus operandi to keep going like, please use models for other companies to play our game. No. They've been gradually working on making their models. What makes a game mini agnostic is the community and the tournament system. Mantic don't run that many tournaments, and it's the same in any other thing. Like, the community is what makes it agnostic. And yeah, that's not going to change. It's never changed to date, and it's not going to change now. But you can totally expect to see that Mantic will continue to push their own model ranges, as they well should. We've got Sean Linkerman, add in range modifiers for shooting, except war engines, close range, less than 6 inches, shooting hits gains +1 or elite, long range. I don't think that's too complicated. Richard Miles, overhaul the list building, merge spells and auras, and if we must, command dice into one uniform system, remove the 1 inch rule, redesign each faction so they have uniqueness, stop being cowards and making optional rules that then divide the player base.
The elimination of the 1 inch rule is interesting, right?
I think a lot of people said that, but I think it's certain aspects of the 1 inch rule that are problematic.
His comment about removing the 1 inch rule, that's really, I guess, just meaning like you can get within an inch of an enemy unit even when you're not charging, I guess is what he's talking about.
And I think part of the problem is it removes the value of some things like nimble, right? Because if you had a super resilient army, you just push up, stop a mill away without charging, and then nothing's, unless it's squares, got room to move anywhere. So that's like one of those consequences that could be problematic depending on the design of the rest of the system.
Next up, we've got Ian Kang. He says, ditch individual, put them on a 40 or 50 square as command groups. I wonder if that's coming. You look at champions, I
think there's a really high chance of something like that,
Yeah. Sort out, withdraw, and disengage. I personally had no issue with the old bounce back after melee. Agreed. It worked. I think it could be more sophisticated or a little bit more clever than what we did in second edition. And again, they'll look at Firefight, look at champions, and then maybe that'll give them some good ideas. Cut some factions. 20 is more than enough for anyone. Keep moving the faction refreshes in the same direction as Twilight, Kin, and Halflings, which will be easier with less factions to think about. Next up, we've got a few from Kurt. He says, save the orcs. Kurt says 10 millimeter rules. Let's just see how the Epic Warpath game does. If it does bonkers and does amazing, you might see it.
Well, actually, we should see that soon. I'm pretty sure Rodney said June, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And if it does bonkers, you might see it as a Kickstarter. What it will never be, it won't be in stores. Let's just be honest. Like, it's so niche.
Yeah, 100%.
He also says ogre, flying, and cav, other than chariots. Next up, we got John. He's got a bunch of comments about eliminating like the bounce back or withdraw, or he's basically point is he thinks you just stay touching, right? And then he's also got some other comments. I'd appreciate some of less is more, removing spells and items and upgrades that aren't in use or recosting them so they are. Remove some auras and upgrades for factions that are too complicated. Carefully do away with some units in factions that are too big, but without invalidating existing armies. As an example from past, Night Stalker Spectres were removed. Could have provided Scarecrows an upgrade to have a minor throwing weapon. The units I have painted as Spectres could then be fielded as the upgrade. Well, I mean, Spectres became doppelgangers, right? But I guess there's no troops of doppelgangers, right? That I guess would be the issue. I think I'm right on that.
Next up, we've got Ben Lansdowne. 4th edition, all armies need either solid terrain mitigation units in balanced way or more items that can transition units to deal with terrain. Certain factions getting across the board Pathfinder or large auras are powerful. Terrain mitigation is awfully powerful when you discuss how thunderous charge can be stopped. Yeah, I don't think that's entirely true. You don't see herd cleaning up all the time, do you? So, I think it's got big benefits.
I get where he's coming from in some units, like they just get Strider. It's like, okay, well, did you really need Strider? I mean, I guess theoretically they're paying for it. Yeah, I mean, everybody's sleeping on Scorched Earth. People need to take that in their list. It's a great tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I do see what he's saying. Like, some units some armies seem to have some unnecessary access to it. But yeah. Tom Wiggins, weird one. I'd like all attacks to hit on 4s before modifiers. And he's basically saying, I think, play with the attack numbers rather than the base stat line. I mean, I feel like that could end up a bit bland for me. But anyway, but he says he thinks it'd improve the easiness to learn, and he'd be taking the scenarios down to 6 really good ones. So that's a different point we haven't heard before.
6, that's low. Next up, we've got Mr. Kyle Poole. The main thing the world needs is Goblin Blasters to go back to actually exploding because it was the correct answer. I agree. I loved them. A flying blaster as a legendary Goblin Wing It is also a correct answer. Memes aside, 4th is a peak opportunity to merge the narrative and competition play into one. New unlocks, clean up a few odd rules, and I hope lean more into theme. More can and should be done with the idea of formations and theme, chunks, or lists. It's a missed opportunity to not have a few battle groups or formations connected to legendary heroes or unique heroes. I would love to see over time 4th expand in a way like this. Like you take Argus 1 and he comes with 2 troops of Silver Breeze and a Stormwind regiment as a random horrible thought out example. Wouldn't matter since I can't read, but I'm here for it all the same. Next up, we've got Dylan Scribner from Arkansas. He says, outside of rules cleanup, the one thing I wish for is more on the infrastructure side. I hope they use Vault as an excuse to provide more unique units. He's speaking our language, bro. To provide more unique units to each faction rather than just the same model and unit that for multiple factions. The Slasher is the biggest example offender of this unit. And what he's saying, guys, if you buy a Slasher model, like that Slasher is used in a bunch of different ways, right? And I think there's ways to really mix it up so it's not just a different guy sitting on the saddle. I understand why they do it, but now they have more freedom to step away from the tactic via the Mantic Vault. This one shocked me. Jeff Radigan says, a purpose for shooting. It's either take enough shots to never have friends in this game or waste points on something that's ineffective and inefficient. He's not wrong.
That's right. Steve Foster had said total revamp of an unlock system. Steve Evans, to be honest, I don't think we need much. The main thing, in my opinion, is the army selection process. More reasons to take infantry and cavalry blocks. Not having 3 generals, kings, lords leading an army, it makes no sense. Obviously, I don't want to see any army to be removed from the game, but if this is inevitable, would like to see some forces consolidated instead of being completely wiped out. For example, the human factions. I feel we need to not mess too much with the basic mechanisms of the game as they great as they are. Asante Russ, siege rules would be nice. I helped with that 6 years ago or so. I'm still here to help. I do like the combat rules and champions. Would be nice to see them incorporated into Kings of War.
Next up, we have John Blakemore. Whoever doesn't choose table sides and first deployment gets to choose who takes the first turn. Roll it all into a single pre-game die roll. Interesting. Get rid of concealed and obscure. Just go back to cover. You're lovingly speaking to Matt. Either bring back the 1-inch bounce back after melee that doesn't break the target unit, or force the defender back. No more of this engage, but not fighting after a failed multi-charge. We're going to see champions.
The other thing that forcing the defender back does, Rob, is makes the player who's positioning before a charge, it might get rid of some of that feel bad. You know how you occasionally see the post pop up going, oh, I can't believe that just because that terrain piece is there, I can't charge now. But now if someone's deliberately used terrain like against their back or something and they're going to take a charge, there's going to be a risk of harm from that. So I think there's a negative to that, inverted commas, things that feel a bit gamey.
Firefight, if you can't back up or run away,
you're done.
I think
Killed.
You just die.
100%.
You just wiped out.
But it's actually quite difficult to pull off. Like it doesn't happen frequently.
Don't worry, it's happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm the master at it. And then John's final comment is clean up the spells list. Flavorful names for the spell are okay. Limited access to spells are okay. Spellcasting tiers are okay. But the arcane library unique but not really unique stuff is just messy. Agreed.
Yeah.
Martin Hawk says, besides all the stuff already mentioned, I would like to see a draft system for list building to simplify it, like in Halo Flashpoint for beginners. Alternative activations would be cool, but don't know if those would work in Kings of War. We talked about that when we were talking about Nick Brooks' comment. Maybe switch to D8 instead of D6, simplify unit profiles and streamline the rules, make the game a lot quicker and easier for beginners. Faction and general orders would be cool, but bind the first ones to heroes like in Champions. So each hero offers a different playstyle list building. It's almost like War Machine with their champions or their heroes. I don't know what they're called, but they have feats, right? And they take a different hero, changes the way your list plays. Definitely add more narrative and campaign play. We have enough competitive games out there, in my opinion. Consolidate the factions and make them more unique regarding their playstyle. Add command groups or models with benefits as upgrades to units as you offer the models for them digitally. Fill gaps from each army with remaking old molds. Do new model ranges for the herd, elves, and dwarfs, please. The whole notion of command groups, I mean, that used to be a thing in first edition. Like, there was a reason to take a standard bearer or a champion. Like, they gave you benefits. And, champions, if you hold back one of your commands, you can then re-roll one of the nerve dice offensively when the unit's not inspired. There's probably something you could do with that, because I don't know about you, but in Champions, that's pretty damn powerful. Then we've got Nathan Arnold. Change army building to pick faction path. It might be broad or focused around a character depending on the faction. And then step 3, faction path opens, limits options. Picking Brother Mark and Basileia eliminates Alohi, but makes cheap infantry open up. Picking Firebrand makes Corsairs unlocking, but Scorchwings 0-3. Larry Sturgeon just says, an index. Dude, I 100%. Finding rules in that book are crazy.
Marshall. RC to work with Mantic to announce rules updates so people about know them, as well as update the companion at the same time. I could not be more on board with this. So recently, BrizCon ran in Australia, and there was an issue with the scenarios that, how there was the unit strength token to loot scenarios?
It's gone, right?
Well, so this is the thing. So if you go by as it's written now, it's just in that one scenario where that unit strength thing counts. But in the errata, it says, the most recent errata, it says that the definition of all of that changes, and that when it's a loot token, that it's unit strength. So they're not the same. And I'm like, this is the thing that just infuriates me sometimes about whether it's the companion or the communication, is that's the kind of thing that should not be screwed up. It's not that hard. These two things need to match. And it's a problem. So I don't know whether it's in or out, to be honest. I have no idea.
You can only score up to your unit strength.
Unit
is that
strength,
right?
or half your unit strength, I think, rounding up. So something like that, but it doesn't match. Update armies during Clash of Kings, update only. If we're going to update armies using this codex system, be clear and have a basic timeline of them, which are being worked on.
Well, I mean, the codex system is every 7 years, right, or something. So, but I think what he's saying is he would like to have annual updates. Like Clash of Kings is everything, and it's probably not realistic, because ultimately they're working on armies all the time.
Yeah, and they want to bring out stuff mid-year.
From a retail perspective, you want to have splash releases.
Yeah.
I would assume 3 or 4 times a year you're going to have updates.
No, generally, I guess Mantic, you get an announcement of a month before what's going to be pre-order.
Well, I mean, there's rumors and stuff, but yeah, you're right. You don't really know 6 months out that they're getting, I mean, I guess Twilight Kin was a rare exception because, they were actually taking it out of the book for a period of time while they redid it. So to his point, I think it makes sense that they look at the way they communicate changes, and maybe there's a better way to do it, especially if we're going to see an overhaul.
He also says Pathfinder should only help with moving at the double and should not help with the charge. This makes Strider and Pathfinder different.
Strider is basically you're never hindered, and that includes obstacles, whereas Pathfinder is only not hindered when you're going through difficult terrain.
Hot take coming from me, remove Surge from the game. It's a one-trick pony that some armies have to rely on. But that could be argued as being thematic as well for something like Empire of Dust. So I don't know.
I'll take the next one. Hong Win Soon says, Kingdoms of Men polearm troops. I don't disagree. I mean, they're kind of in that weird place we were talking about before where if you want cheap troops, you might take a militia mob. But if you want better stuff, you're probably going to take Pike because they got Ensnare and Phalanx, or you're going to take Foot Guard. He's complaining that, Kingdoms of Men don't have a lot of good units. I think that's the point. Kingdoms of Men are vanilla. Everybody else is either better or worse than Kingdoms of Men.
So Scott Henderson, wouldn't mind seeing some bonus for not moving. Infantry and heavy infantry can hold the line. I don't mind that. And a crossbow and rifles receive a ready aim fire order. I think that's good and simple.
Got a comment that reminds me of Champions. In Champions, if you give them a Hawk command, you're +1 for shooting.
Yeah. I think that's good. I don't mind
Yeah,
that.
I think so too. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a quick commercial break. On the other side, we will get in and give you a little update on the podcast, and we'll give you the next topic of the month. We'll be right back.
Hi, guys. This is General Gaddafi from Singapore, and you're listening to Countercharge.
Welcome back to Countercharge. Before we get into the podcast updates, don't forget, share the show with the community. Give us a review. We want more and more people to listen and be involved in the Kings of War community. So there's always room for more at the table. So in terms of podcast updates, we're working on a series about organized competitive play. Right now, we're thinking 3 episodes, one about your path to tournament play, which will talk to you about how you get into, like in the case of the U.S., like how you get involved with the U.S. Masters system. The second episode is we really want to do a big deep dive, and I know we sort of touched on it, but scoring systems. We'll go again, and now maybe we'll talk about other systems that have popped up. Like the Countercharge scoring system that we use at Kings of Memphis is really different. So, and then the third one we want to talk about is running a tournament, because ultimately, if we don't have people running tournaments, we don't have organized competitive play, right? That's the lifeblood. And then, great episode with Scott and Ryan and Jeremy about display boards. More coming. I think we'll do an episode that really maybe an entry level display board, like, because they talked about like the mountaintop, but maybe you don't know how to get to that mountaintop. What's your first step? So we're going to give you some very specific direction on like what you could purchase, how you could build your first display board. We'll have lots of more list builders coming. Green Lady Army Review is coming, but good Lord, is it hard to schedule worldwide time zones. Matt, videos are flying.
Yep. So we've got our All In Champions unboxing video on YouTube. So subscribe on YouTube if you've not checked that out before. And we've got another video coming where Rob and I chat brushes and caring for your hobby gear. So we'll see how that goes, and we've got a follow-up episode planned. So we'll just don't expect your high level 100,000 subscribers videos, but I think it'll come out okay.
Right, and we're trying to give content that we're smart enough to talk about, right? It's like when you write a book, you write about what you know. Well, same thing here.
And then for next month, for our June Fireside, Rob, we're going to have a slightly more controversial topic.
Oh, I love controversy.
Oh, don't I?
I love controversy.
I love this one. Where do you draw the line for unpainted and counts as armies at 2-day events?
My feedback, no unpainted armies at a 2-day event. People have paid money to travel. No. Count as armies, they don't need to be there. Maybe take a step back and say, when we're talking about count as, if you did your job and you modeled it in a way that you can communicate to your opponent what it is, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I took my Space Marine army, and I'm playing him as dwarves, for example.
Yeah.
That's a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, that wraps up our Fireside for May. We hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, keep countercharging.
Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on Countercharge. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at counterchargepodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter @countercharge15, or by commenting on the Countercharge Kings of War podcast Facebook group. If you enjoy the show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Until next time, keep countercharging. Music is a composition of Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.